What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Funnel Vision Show. I'm very excited for my next guest because now we are going to dive into process optimization. We're going to talk about how do you systemize your agency and the processes around your agency so that you could probably scale yourself out of it a little bit and not have to work in the agency and instead work out of the agency. And my guest today is an expert at this. He's helped agencies all over systemize and implement these processes. His name is Marquis Murray. Marquis, welcome.
Thanks so much, Mikkel. It's good to be here. And I got to say, I love the name of the show. So great for your brand. So great for
Funnel
Clever.
Vision.
I love it.
I know everything kind of lines up around the funnel game and the funnel world. I know it was actually one of our a long time ago. Somebody in our community was like talking about funnelytics, and she was like, "It's like I have like X-ray vision, or maybe it's called funnel vision." And I was like, that's a really good name right there. So, anyways, this isn't about me. It's not about funnelytics or the name of Funnel Vision. It's about you and about what you do for agencies. So let's start with the usual. Every person that we bring onto the show, we always ask them to give us their humble or not so humble bragging rights. What have you been able to do for clients? What have you been able to do for your own business? In other words, why should people kind of tune into this episode?
Sure. Yeah. My name is Marquis. I'm CEO at Cirface. We are a systems improvement consultancy. So we work mainly with marketing teams within mid-size and enterprise companies. And the journey officially started at the turn of the pandemic. I was running a marketing agency prior to that, working with big brands, helping with marketing campaigns, and switched over to operations business consulting at like I said, the turn of the pandemic. But it was at that point I started up a new business called Ditto. It was my first kind of run at this. Had some ups and downs, but managed to scale it to the point where within 2 years, I had an offer for acquisition, and I was able to exit that business at the end of 2022. So that was really exciting. It was my first kind of shot at something like that. Since then, I've started this new consultancy. Like I said, we work with marketing teams of enterprise companies. So whether it's working with major sports organizations or teams within their organizations, we have some companies in the fintech space, in the travel space, media and publishing space, companies who you would hear of or use every single day. And we have the opportunity to work with hundreds of people at a time to help them to systemize how they work within Asana mainly. Asana is our key partner. Um, Help them to train and understand the tool Asana and just ultimately work better together. And what's nice about the fact that we're partners with Asana is I live in Canada, like you, Mikkel, and we're the first Canadian Asana partners as well. So we've been in it for a little bit and have gotten pretty deep in with their product services team, with their professional services team, with their sales teams, and so yeah, putting a lot on it, but it's been a great journey so far.
And very interesting in terms of how you kind of got to Asana and but more so working with these enterprise businesses integrating. So let's take a step back. How did you started your company, you were able to exit in 2022, you said, right? So that means it's only been about 2 years that you've been running the current business. But how did it get there? Like, tell me a little bit about the journey of like, this is what we're going to focus on. This is my area of expertise. I can help these bigger agencies and bigger businesses, really integrate and systemize their processes. What got you there?
Yeah, it really started with my personal mission. Like I said, I was running a marketing agency, and I had come from corporate operations, but I had been moonlighting as a freelancer, doing digital marketing, SEO, social media, website stuff, while I was still working my corporate job. So I understood a little bit. I was taking some courses online, and it was 2015 when my kids were born. We have twin boys. I decided to leave the corporate space. So I was doing freelance for a little bit. One of my customers was a marketing agency. They eventually brought me in house as their digital marketing manager. And it was 8 months in, I realized, man, like I can run an agency. I can do this myself. Michael Gerber calls it the entrepreneurial seizure, right? Where like you all of a sudden, as the manager, feel like you can do everything your boss is doing. So I started this agency and quickly realized, oh no, like it's more complex than that, right? Like, sure, I can deliver, but now I got to do the sales, I have to do the marketing, I have to do the admin, I have to do the onboarding and the training, and everything was all over the place. And every new person that I brought onto my team, I was training them, I was getting them up to speed. Every new client that came on, I was setting up their Facebook ad accounts, and I was setting up their campaigns, and then I would like pass it off to a team member. And so my team would continue coming to me daily, weekly. And it was, hey, Marquis, how do you do this thing? How do you do that? Where do I find this? Where do I find that? And it was out of sheer frustration, honestly, where I said, I'm not doing this anymore. Like, I can't answer these questions. Someone else, has to do this stuff. I started documenting everything that I was doing. So I got on loom.com, started recording my screen. And every time I had a question from someone, I'd record a loom, send them that video. And then I started organizing those looms inside of Asana. So I started building a little documentation library. So if anyone was looking for something, I could send it off to them. And so that's where it really all started for me. Like, it came out of necessity because my marketing agency was growing. And the part that I left out of my earlier story of 2020 having to switch over to operations and consulting was that I wasn't feeling fulfilled in my marketing role, right? Like, I knew it, I understood it, but I was always an operations person. And so at the suggestion of a mentor at the time, still a great friend, love and respect him, um, he encouraged me to go off and like answer 3 questions. So I spent the day away. I had my trusty yellow legal and my paper, and the questions were, what change is it you're trying to bring to the world? What's going to get you out of bed every morning? Essentially, what's your North Star? What's going to keep you grounded? And why would someone fly you across the world to do business with you? And the truth was that these are the hardest questions I'd ever had to, contemplate at the time. And I didn't have an answer to them. And it wasn't until I found and came across my mission, which was to help creative entrepreneurs live the life of freedom they started their businesses to achieve. I was that creative entrepreneur. The companies that we were servicing were creative entrepreneurs. And like I needed systems, I also saw that they needed systems. So we started implementing tools like Asana for my marketing clients. We started implementing tools like HubSpot so that for my customers who we were gathering leads for, they now had a place where they could organize all those leads and add in workflow automation. And so here I was, the marketing guy with the ops background, now providing systems consulting for my marketing clients. And so when 2020 came, it was an obvious switch into like what I had to do, because there were so many people who were remote, displaced for the first time. I'm sure you remember, didn't know what Zoom was, didn't know what Slack was, didn't know what a project management tool was. And so we had to help them kind of get set up and get going. So that's where it all really came from. It came out of necessity. I saw my customers were struggling with the same thing. And then when the pandemic came, there was a whole new market that needed operations and systems and needed to focus on that. So I feel like ultimately I was in the right place at the right time.
So you answered those 3 questions, and you started to understand a little bit more of your purpose, a little bit more about why you're doing what you're doing. How has that evolved over time? Because now you sold your agency, or you sold your business, and you started a new one. But now it seems like you work mostly with more enterprise level companies, which means you're less working with the entrepreneur and the creative side. So has your 3 questions evolved over time? Is this more of a business decision? What has changed throughout that process?
Such a good question, and it's so timely because I've been thinking about this as of late. I mean, again, my original mission and something that still gets me out of bed is help creative entrepreneurs live the life of freedom they started their businesses to achieve. And like I said, I was that creative entrepreneur. I still am. Um, I when I sit down and really think about it, when I look at the the version 3 of the vision board that my wife and I have, when I look at the goals and all the ideas and plans I wrote down on this yellow legal years ago, I've achieved all of it. So like in that regard, I feel like I've arrived and I've achieved like this current mission for myself. And I'm thinking about what my next steps will be, what my next iteration will be. Um, I haven't quite nailed that just yet, but the mission for Surface has evolved um, to not really help them, these individuals, live the life of freedom, but we work with teams, we work with leaders, we work with VPs and directors who are answering to CMOs at their companies. And so it's really about eliminating burnout, right? That's where the focus has shifted to eliminating burnout for these individuals and their team leaders so that they can all work better together. We've seen what not being able to systemize your work looks like. We've seen what duplicate work does to teams. We've seen what misalignments and silos do to teams and how they're created. We've seen that there aren't any standards around how anyone works. We've seen how churn and turnover of staff has just left gaping holes inside of processes. And so that's left the people that are sitting in the seats with not much in the way of direction or understanding of their roles. And so really the mission is now to like empower those people, give them a structure and systems and train them in their own ways of working so that they can have a better working experience and ultimately um, be able to take those experiences home and have a better home life, be a better neighbor, a better parent, a better spouse, right? And so that's where the focus has really shifted to. Um, there's a whole story I can talk about burnout forever, but that also came out of a personal experience of mine, and so it's become really important, and that's where we're focusing our energy these days.
And when you work with a team, I think it's very similar. I assume when with a big team or a small team. But let's just take kind of the average size marketing team. You're right. Usually, you have the media buyers in doing their thing. You've got the content people doing their thing. You've got everybody kind of doing their own thing in their own way, in their own process. So, walk me through if we were to take your process into a playbook, right? If you were to come into a company and it's like this is what it looks like high level playbook wise for us to turn this team from siloed and turn it into kind of an integrated process oriented team. What does that playbook look like?
Yeah, the framework that our team follows, it's a what we call the 4D framework, and it's just basic consulting and systems improvement. But we take them through our discovery phase, our design phase, our deployment stage, and then our documentation stage as well. So discovery typically will be our key stakeholders. These are the managers, the team leads, the VPs who are overseeing the work of the individual contributors. And typically they're coming to us with what's broken, what their problems are, their leadership, whether it's senior leadership or someone in the C-suite, they need to get a better understanding of status. They need to be able to see oversight of all the various campaigns and assets that are being created. They need to see what workload looks like. So we're walking them through exercises where we're trying to uncover what their day-to-day looks like, what their current state looks like. We're mapping that all out for them and validating where the pain points are and where they feel the areas of opportunity are to improve their processes. From there, we go on to stage two, which is our design. We're going through and doing research and running different scenarios to try and find the most optimal way to improve their processes. So for a team who wants to go through this themselves in a playbook sense, I mean, you're going out and you're just testing things. You're throwing stuff at the wall, and before you fully implement it and roll it out, you're just testing. You're testing in a vacuum, inside of a sandbox, if you will, right, to figure out what makes sense, and then you're documenting the results. You're bringing in relevant SMEs to say, hey, what do you think about this? Hey, does this work? Does this make sense? Right? Once we have a good understanding of what the design looks like, we really test it. We test it on our end first, and then we hand it over to the customers to test through UAT. Um, Once we've got sign off from the customer, everything's feeling good, looking good, they understand it, we move into deploying, where we're not just working with those key stakeholders anymore, but anyone who was on the general team who wasn't involved in the discovery or the design phase, their voice wasn't heard, maybe they weren't in part of the decision making. We now bring them into the picture. and show them what we've done, get their feedback on it. We make tweaks as we go, but we're also training them and onboarding them to the new workflows. Then the last step is once we have final sign off on everything, we document it for them, right? We create the SOPs, we show them how to maintain and update their workflows. We put it in a knowledge base for them, and then we go off and provide ongoing support for 6 months to a year after the implementation. So we've got it down to pretty much a science now. We spent the last 7 months at our company refining this end-to-end system and process for our customers. And so we've thought about this a lot, and we've taken our best practices to be able to apply them time and time again.
Interesting that you kind of broke it down. I like the biggest one is, the deployment. I think a lot of times businesses struggle with getting people to adopt a process, right? It's easy to document a process. It's easy to put together a checklist. But what I've noticed especially is that reinforcing and changing people's behaviors is a big part of that process. Like they're used to doing things this way. Now we've got to change their behavior to do it this way. Uh, what happens in that phase? Like, how do you guys get people to change their behavior, especially in large organizations where there's usually a little less buy-in than, let's say, an entrepreneurial startup where everybody's a little bit more driven by the mission, everybody's more bought in because they have a bigger impact. In large organizations, a lot of times people clock in, clock out, they like their job, they do their job, but that buy-in is a little less. So how do you guys get people to buy into the new way of operating?
Yeah, it's tough. I'll be honest. It's very difficult. I mean, in our case, when a team has approached us and they've gotten sign off to spend X amount of dollars, right, on this initiative, we're pretty certain that they've figured out why they're doing it and they've communicated it to their teams why they're doing it. That's our assumption, anyways. It's not always the case, and why I say it's tough is because we meet with these key stakeholders who haven't informed their teams, right? And then it comes to this deploy stage, and it's like, guys, this is what we're doing now. We've been working with this agency for months now. Here's what we're going to do differently, and that's where we see the resistance. So, to leaders, looking for organizational change, think about change management before anything, right? Like it's too late if we've gotten to the deploy stage because what happens, and I can share a quick story here of a perfect example. We were helping a marketing department of a large tech and data company, migrate from Monday.com over to Asana. We had two of their leaders, their managers, that we were chatting with for weeks, negotiating, and in the discovery and design stage, we were working with them. And then they said, we want it to look nothing like Monday.com. We want to start fresh. We want new processes. We understand this is a new tool. We're like, great, let's do it. Right. So we're building it how we know how to build it for marketing teams. We're thinking about what their intake looks like, how they manage their campaigns and events, how they manage their content calendars, their reviews, and all of that. And then we finally bring in their team, and the first thing they said is, wait a minute, this looks nothing like Monday.com. Where's this? Why is this different? Right. And so if you're not involving those key people, your subject matter experts, your individual contributors early in the process, it's simply not going to work because you're going to feel that resistance. If they don't feel like they were a part of the process and the decision making, it's going to fall apart. But to try and answer your question, repetition, right? Communicating time and time again as much as you can, right? Like what the change is, why we're doing it, making sure we're documenting that. And in our process, when we're doing the deployment, we have our demos. We allow them to go off and test it and come back, and then we sit with them for office hours to then answer questions and make sure they're feeling good about their specific use cases. But it's much harder to do it that way because you're fighting, you're working uphill, right? And so, yeah, simple answer: start as early as you can, involve your team, or else it's not going to work for you.
Yeah, I think that that is, I think that that's the biggest thing is a lot of times people think that process documentation and all that stuff is a top down approach. And if we're going to kind of create this new path forward, it's got to be almost like a dictatorship of like, this is what we're doing and we're going to move this way. But if you don't involve the people who are actually operating the process, then you will face that resistance. Once you involve them a little bit more in the design of that process, even, why do you do your job the way you do it? How do you do it, etc. Then it makes it a little bit easier because then they feel like they have some ownership. So I like to end every episode with, we're all marketers listening to this. You're a marketer. You build processes and help marketers. You run a marketing agency. What is your number one best growth tactic that you can think of that you've seen time and time again that you would go back to and be like, if I could just do this, this would help?
Oh man. I remember it was like 2014, 15, 16, like everyone was saying how big video is going to be, right? They're like, in this year, I think it was like by 2020, this percentage of the content online is going to be video, and like get on it right now or else you're going to get left behind. I feel like we're hearing that about AI right now. Um, for me, the biggest growth tactic that I could share that's worked for me has been consistent in growth, revenue from ads, um, leads coming from these sources is creating a YouTube channel. I started my YouTube channel in 2021. I wish I had started it in 2015. I started it, I launched 5 videos, and then I didn't post again for 5 months. And those videos enabled me to launch what was Ditto at the time to the next level. People are seeing my content online. They're seeing that I understand their use cases. I understand their issues. I understand the solutions to those issues. And so there's trust that's built there, right? They can book a call directly from YouTube. They see that I'm working through a use case that they're struggling with right now. And that's helped me to build a community. Um, 9 out of 10 calls that get booked on my calendar, or I was watching your YouTube video and I want to do exactly that for my team. You seem like the guy, right? So that's been huge for me. Obviously doing podcasts and things like this, but yeah, definitely if I could have started YouTube 5 or 6 years earlier, I would have done that. But it didn't happen by accident. Like the growth I've experienced, like I've done a lot of research, watched a lot of videos. Daryl Eves has a great book called The YouTube Formula. I've taken the courses. I'm looking at my analytics, right? Like that's all so important. And I'd say if you have the opportunity to say something and to speak to an audience, start doing it. Like if you're gonna be the person that's gonna gatekeep and think nobody wants to hear from me, that's not true. You know, uh, that's a lie. And so I'd say, yeah, just lean into the content, because you have no idea who's on the other end watching and who needs to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Video has been a massive, massive reason why Funnelytics took off in the first place, and just putting out content. And ultimately, as long as it's genuine and you're there to help the people that you are listening, and you're clear as to who you want to listen, then it becomes extremely powerful. Marquis, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you sharing your knowledge and your experience and your story as to how you kind of got to where you are. Where can people learn more about you?
Yeah, LinkedIn's probably the best place for me, or to connect with me, Marquis Murray, Quis. Or if you want to search that on YouTube and learn more about Asana, we're expanding the platform to talk about other tools as well. So you might find something that you like.
Awesome. We will have your link in the show notes as well. So thank you very much for taking the time, and we'll chat soon.
Thank you, Mikkel.